Hello! It's the Great Canadian Bagger here, coming to you with another and final update to the U.S. 2022 Senate races? Well, however you want to pluralize that, because these are really 30, I think in this particular case, 34 separate elections. Now, I've decided here, I'm not going to be doing a detailed or rigorous exampling of best and worst case scenarios for the Senate, because I can do a very easy, simplified version of this right here. And frankly, I don't have run out of time in my week because, oh my god, too many Senate races. This wasn't the best plan in the world, but I'm not stopping now. 2024, I'm going to be doing something completely different. This is way too time intensive for Senate races, that is. But we went this far. This is the last update, hopefully, for the Senate. So here's what we got. So, where do you want to start? Let's start with the ones that didn't do anything. Washington stayed the same-ish. There was a bunch of polls that showed the race a lot closer for Smiley and Murray, but Smiley, my model still has Smiley quite far back. Frankly, Washington is maybe as competitive as North Carolina or North Carolina right now, but North Carolina is not competitive in practice. And it's really just the last wave of polls in Washington that are close, so that could be something real. It could just be recently anomalous. Hard to say, really. We'll see on Election Day. It isn't outrageous that Smiley could win, but if you are betting money on it, I wouldn't. It seems extremely unlikely to me. Moving over down to Colorado. This one, there was a recent... the Trafalgar poll out today shows the race is really close, but a couple other polls that from pollsters that don't necessarily have as good a track record as Trafalgar, but are perfectly solid pollsters, like Emerson, who have the race as D+8. So, yeah, Trafalgar had only D+2, but I think Trafalgar's wrong in this case. There's just so many pollsters that I consider generally decent. Not necessarily the best pollsters in the world, but not this level of miss that they would require if Trafalgar's accurate here. So, unless Trafalgar really captured on very last minute momentum, because it is the most recent poll, this doesn't look like a close race at all. This is, of the races I'm doing in depth, and thank God I only decided to do the number I did. I would have no time in my life otherwise. There's too many Senate races. And they all have to be done separately if you want to do it with good rigor. God, it took so much effort. Colorado, not a competitive state. I don't see it swinging. Of the 9 I did in detail, this is the least competitive of it. It's probably Colorado, North Carolina, then Wisconsin. Not Wisconsin, then Washington, then Wisconsin. In that order of the least competitive of the quote-unquote competitive states. I don't see Colorado moving at all. North Carolina, again, there are occasional polls that show the race is close, but let's be real, people. It's not going to be close. North Carolina is one of the states that reliably has pretty bad polling in it, and the Senate candidate typically goes much more. There's much more R votes for the Senate candidate than polls typically say, in a state that is generally drifting red right now. If you look at the last 20 years, was a bit of a swing state under Obama, but now it's been pretty solid the last 2 presidential elections. it seems pretty solid. It's not, again, like like Washington. It wouldn't be outrageous if Beasley won. I think this is Beasley's seat. Let me double check. Or Beasley's, the Democrat, is here. Let me double check. Yeah, Beasley. It wouldn't be outrageous if Beasley won, but it's extremely unlikely. We go to Wisconsin. Man, I can't speak tonight. Once again, not a particularly competitive race. Once again, the Republicans tend to outperform polling in Wisconsin quite reliably. And even worse for the Democrats here is the last about 2 weeks of polling have been a decisive lead even in just the raw polling numbers. We're starting with the Data for Progress, a Democrat partisan pollster, R+5. Then we have R+9 from Patriot Polling, which is an entity I'm not really familiar with, so that could be good or I don't know. Emerson had R+5, Wick had R+4, Fox had R+3, Marquette had R+2. So it's pretty clearly, the polls themselves are clearly saying it are, and Republicans tend to outperform polling. So it doesn't look competitive at all. Again, it is close enough that if Barnes did win, it's not outrageously unlikely, but you wouldn't expect it. If you were to bet, you would never bet on Barnes here, unless you are really into the high-risk, low-win bets, I suppose. Now we start moving into some of the more interesting states. So this is Nevada. Nevada normally is pretty swingy, but in this particular election, it's not. I can't entirely tell you, because I'm not from Nevada and I don't really have time to research every single state individually, because again, you have to consider every single one of these states separately from all the other ones, because each Senate race is very much about the person as well as the party. People matter in Senate races. Quite a lot. The candidate matters. But the polls are, again, pretty solid. There is a bit more doubt in them. There's a few more polls that are showing Masto either close or narrowly winning. But the overall trend is Laxalt's winning, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he's been pretty safe for quite a while now. I would be extremely surprised if he ended up losing on election day. I would say this is pretty much a foregone conclusion as an R pickup for the Senate. So right there, before we go into the actual, what I would consider the swing states here for this election, the swing races, which are all very close actually. A pickup in Nevada means that even if the Republicans lose every other seat, all the more competitive ones, it's a tied Senate. So right now, the best case scenario for the Democrats is a tied Senate, because the odds that they will win the other four and Nevada or Wisconsin are really low. Like, extremely low. I would say possibly almost zero. Like, if that happens with the current polling as is, I would be really suspect of that election. Something went wrong. That doesn't sound... Either the polling is completely terrible or something weird happened. Especially if my Congress election forecast is correct and the Republicans do that well in Congress. Because I forgot this in Colorado, but my model for the Congress said, or House of Representatives, as Colorado sending 6 Republicans for their House Representative delegation, but at the same time, Colorado's Senate race, Bennett is safe, pretty much. It's not entirely safe, but he has about a +8 margin here, so pretty solid. I can't square that circle. I don't really know how you could be having Colorado voting significantly plus R in the Congress delegation, for the House Representatives delegation, but significantly plus D for Senate. Maybe it's some quirk with Joe O'Day. I don't really know anything about O'Day, so comment below. But that is a weird result. That's not something I would normally expect to see. The Senate race being so one-sided, but the House race being so one-sided as well. That's a weird anomaly. If that is correct, and I call that correctly, first off, feel pretty good. But second off, that's a weird one for the history books. Going on, though, now we get to surprise one. This is... Pennsylvania is now... I'm kind of doing this in quasi-order of most safe to least safe. Pennsylvania, following the debate last week, has went from... like a respectable, like 3-ish point Democrat lead to a 3-ish point Republican lead. That one debate destroyed Fetterman. It completely sank his campaign. Is it too late? I don't really know. We'll see what turnout looks like on Election Day. There is quite a lot of early voting in Pennsylvania, and there's quite a lot of what's the word for it? Of people who've already actually voted in Pennsylvania. So if Election Day turnout isn't really high, this might be a little too late. But, this is a big but, if the polls are conducted properly, that shouldn't be a problem, because if you do a proper random sample, you should have people who've already voted in your sample, and then they should be saying, yes, I voted D or I voted R. So then that shouldn't really be a problem if you're doing proper polling. But as I'm sure anyone watching this channel is aware, you got to be really careful sometimes, because a lot of US pollsters are really bad. Quite bad, in fact. The next big one is Georgia here. Georgia is still pretty much guaranteed to go into a runoff. That's December 6th, I think. Walker's held his position, but we're still talking about like a little more than +1. It's like plus 1.8 or something like that. It's close. Walker does have a consistent lead. He's about 49.5 to just like 47.7 or something. So it looks like it's going to go to runoff, and I think historically speaking, a runoff probably will mean the Republican will win in this context, but it's not guaranteed. Turnout really will matter in that runoff race. But it is leaning Republican right now. So just on first round votes, Walker does have the advantage here quite significantly. He was damaged earlier by all the scandals, which probably has denied him his ability to win a first round win. With over 50% of the vote, that is better to phrase that. But I don't think it's damaged him enough to deny him the second round win. If you just look at the other candidates on ballot, like the independents, they're not really independents. That's not the really best way to say it. The third party candidates on the ballot, like there's a libertarian, and then there's some smaller ones that I aren't. But the main other one's libertarian, and I don't really see the libertarian votes going for Warnock. I could see them maybe not voting at all, but if they don't vote at all, that should give Walker the win if he turns out the people, his voters. So it looks like it should go to Walker, but it's not a guarantee. It's pretty close. If Warnock wins, that's a very possible outcome. That wouldn't be that surprising. Now we get into the two real tight ones. So they're about the same. New Hampshire, sorry. Let's start with Arizona. So I've been pretty bullish on Masters for a while, but the last wave of polls that came from Arizona, really weakened his position quite a bit. Now he's only up about a point. Maybe it's because I can't really give you a good reason why that's happened. It doesn't. I didn't see anything big that happened the last week that really says to me that he should have gained or lost. So I don't really know why it changed so significantly, other than blaming polls. Either the most recent wave or the last wave of polls is wrong. But that's not really a satisfying answer, and we won't really know until the election day. So I'm going to go with the safer conclusion of something happened in Arizona that I missed, and it caused the race to tighten. If you're from Arizona, would love to hear what that is, if you can name it. You're seeing the flaws here of a one-man team. One man cannot keep track of all these races. This is too many damn races. I'm not doing this again. And finally, we have New Hampshire. So New Hampshire's an interesting one. So New Hampshire's been closing for quite a bit. The last probably like 5 weeks or so. Pretty much every single update, the New Hampshire race has closed. In the last 2 weeks, it was more or less the case that every single poll entered, depending on the detail of the cross tables and such like that, flipped the result. From Hassan barely winning to Bolduc barely winning. Right now, we've kind of settled to Bolduc barely winning, but if a poll came out tomorrow and it was D+1, it would probably flip. Can't guarantee that because, again, it depends on what the cross tables are. It depends on demographics and stuff like that. But as is, it's extremely close. We're talking about 0.9%. It's similar margin. I think Arizona's actually like 1.2 or something, but close. Same difference. Very close. It's an extremely close race here in New Hampshire. And that should make sense to everyone thinking here. Hassan barely won in 2016. Barely won. And Sununu? I don't know how to pronounce his name. It looks weird on paper, you gotta admit. Anyways, the governor of New Hampshire is extremely popular, and he's blowing out polls like plus 15, plus 17 range. So, just based on that, you would assume he should carry Bolduc over the finish line, even if Bolduc was a bad candidate. It's not unheard of that you might have a really popular governor and a same party senator not both win. But when you're talking about that split tickets happen, but they're not that common. Most voters will vote straight down ticket. So the big thing with someone like Chris Sununu, I still don't want to pronounce his name at all. The big thing with someone like him on the ballot, this is similarly happening, I think, in Arizona with Kerry Lake, to probably a lesser extent, though, isn't necessarily that voters who are voting for him are going to be the same voters who want to vote for Bolduc, but someone that popular tends to increase turnout because people like to vote for people who are popular. If you like your governor, you're more willing to go out and vote for them. That tends to be how that happens. The elections with the lowest turnout are the ones where no one likes any of the candidates. Equally, 2020 showed ones where everyone hates everyone. Where people hate both the candidates. But in general terms, elections where people are to the candidates have the least turnout, and when it's the ones who are really excited and really like a candidate have the most turnout. So what you would expect here is that because Sununu is so popular, there's going to be a lot of Republican turnout, more than normal, and possibly Republican-leaning independents as well. And what that will do is it'll bring out people who probably wouldn't vote otherwise, and they'll vote our down ticket, and that will likely carry Bolduc to the finish line, even though this is an extremely close race. Now, it's not a done deal. By all means, we're talking, again, 0.9. We're just on the other side of me calling it too close to call, which is, I generally have a 0.5 as too close to call. 0.5 or less, I should say. So, it's extremely close, but we are looking at Bolduc barely edging this one out. If this is correct, I think you might see Bolduc win by a very similar margin to how Hassan won in 2016. Again, not guaranteed, but I would expect it. So, that said, what are the best and worst case scenarios are talked about here? Well, the worst case scenario, that's a better way to phrase it. The best case scenario for the Democrats is a tied Senate. Their best case scenario is they win Arizona, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. This is a tall ask because all of them are leaning Republican right now. And the next closest states, Nevada, Wisconsin, are not close at all. Both of these are around +6 margins. Those aren't very close states. If you're talking about effectively the Senate polls being off by 6 points, well, not just the raw polls, my model being off by 6 points in one direction, first off, I don't think it's ever happened, but and if it did, that is a very big miss, and it likely isn't the model. That would probably be error on my part in entering data or something. But it's extremely unlikely, almost 0% chance. So we are, anyone like 538 who was saying that there is a chance that Democrats win the Senate, this is just wishful thinking. That's hopium. 538's right. I guess he gets to dab really hard on me, but I literally cannot fathom how he has the Democrats having like a near 50% chance of winning the Senate. Does he expect Nevada to flip? I mean, he does expect Nevada to flip, to be a hold, to be fair. I think 538 has Nevada at like 0.2 or something for the Democrat. Let's see. He has Masto at plus 0.5, which well, let's just say I don't have any sweet clue how he got that result. But he does have that result. So he somehow thinks Nevada's going to flip. It's not. Or hold, it's not. Like, the odds of that and the other 4 states, nearly zero. It's not going to happen. They're not going to win the Senate. Now, on the other hand, for the Republicans, where does that put us? Well, the best case scenario at this point, there's 2 ways to look at it. So, obviously, you have all the states shown here. So they do win Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and New Hampshire. They win all those. That's a given. And then there's 2 ways to look at this. Option 1, the Colorado polls are all wrong, and my House of Representatives model is correct, and they win Colorado. I don't think that's very likely, but that... Now, it wouldn't be out there. That wouldn't be unheard of. Or, the most recent poll from Trafalgar in Washington is actually correct, and the race is razor thin. And Smiley edges out the razor-thin race. So in other words, I think one of Washington or Colorado going Republican is the best case scenario. Both, not going to happen. Because the Colorado one literally requires pretty much all of the Senate polls to be wrong. Which, maybe, but I don't think so. Whereas the Washington poll, or Washington being a surprise flip, the dark horse race, if you will, that's not impossible. It's just extremely unlikely. It is almost unlike... Now, you might be thinking to yourself here, Bagel, didn't you just diss on 538 for saying Nevada might go Democrat? And now you're talking about Washington might go Republican? Yes, but this is for a different reason. First off, I straight up don't understand how 538 has this number, to be completely clear here. So, even if you do raw polling and no other corrections... That's the wrong state. 1 second here. Even if you do raw polling and no other corrections, you should get the Real Clear Politics average of about 1.2. I have no sweet clue how 538 has Lixalt 1.5 points below Real Clear. What? And he has it Real Clear slightly below me because I'm expecting that there's going to be polling error based off historical results in Nevada. Or outperforming of the polls, if you want to phrase it that way. So, long story short here, I'm ahead of Real Clear. Real Clear is just a raw polling average. And a raw polling average with no funny business is saying it's R plus 1.2 to 538's D plus 0.5. And these numbers, 46.6 is pretty hard to... except when you look at the last little bit, and there's only been 2 polls above 46. 2. In the last, 3 weeks. 2 weeks, really. Bad math. And you get 46.1, and there's been several polls around 50. I don't understand. I don't know what Nate Silver's doing. Doesn't make any sense to me. Whereas if we go look over at Washington, just the raw polls, no funny business, we've had a tie, and we have 2 really close ones. Trafalgar at +1 and Insider Advantage at +2 for the D in the last week or so. So there could be some last-minute momentum here. It's not unheard of for last-minute momentum to occur in polls, but the caution here, which is why I'm not really taking this entirely seriously, is the correlating factor is more Trafalgar and Inside Advantage are all Republican polling firms. So I guess you could throw coefficient in that too, because they're only at +3. So I don't think it's very likely, because I don't really, for general terms, I don't really care much about the bias of the polling firm or what partisan is, as long as it makes good polls. But it does cause some concern, to me at least, if all of the polls are saying that it's really close or all partisan polls. That is a little suspect to me. That said, I don't really think there's anything incredibly wrong with those pollsters. Some of them are better than others. I think Insider Advantage is more of a B-tier pollster, from remembering correctly my brain. But Trafalgar is generally pretty good, so it's not unheard of. Maybe there is some last-minute momentum here, and maybe Smiley could pull it out. Maybe. I think it's very unlikely. But we're talking about the best case here. So best case, sure. Sure. And this is best plausible case, which is, again, why I'm not saying Nevada can go Democrat. Because assuming To throw Nevada Democrat and say it's 51 seats for the Democrat means that right now my model has all these 5 states leaning Republicans. That means the Democrats have to win, if we think about it as a coin toss, they have to win 5 consecutive coin tosses where they're unless like that's not really a great example. They basically have to roll like a Yahtzee. Like, that's very unlikely. It can happen, technically, I guess, but if that happened, if they won all 5, that would be a big unlikely. It would be remarkable. I don't see it happening either, especially again with places like New Hampshire and Arizona having quite a popular Republican gubernatorial candidate, likely going to carry the Senate candidate across the finish line. And Fetterman's campaign basically just imploded. His only path to victory at this point, Fetterman, is if he got enough early voting turnout. I think any swing voter in Pennsylvania is probably not voting Fetterman anymore, if they haven't already voted. So the election day vote in Pennsylvania is probably only going to be the quote-unquote always blue voter voting Fetterman. And there's not enough of those to carry him across the finish line unless there was a lot of early vote. And I don't think there was enough early vote. And a lot of the polls suggested that the early votes were going to be were less tilted Democrat this time than they were in 2020. But not many polls looking at that, so that might not be right. But it's very unlikely. Very unlikely. At this point, it looks like Fetterman should lose, and it should be odds, which for the Pennsylvania GOP is the most bittersweet of victories. They replaced the Democrat with someone they don't particularly like. Honestly, if it wasn't for the fact Fetterman had a stroke, he would have won this one. There's no way Republicans in Pennsylvania are excited to vote for Oz. I don't see it. He's just so not a Republican. But with that, I'll wrap this up here. If you liked this video or you saw anything that you think you should correct or have any comments you want to make, by all means comment below. Smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to follow up for more. I am, once again, reminding everybody that there is a live stream set to be done on November 8th where we're going to go over what? Do election night coverage and discuss the election that's happening and stuff like that. Myself with my lovely co-host Lexi. We're looking at probably 8 Eastern time start time, but it's not 100% set in stone right now. And I don't know how late it will go because I still have a day job, so I can't stay up forever. But I think we'll have a gist of who's going to win early enough that it won't matter. And with that, I bid you all adieu, and I hope to see you on Sunday for the final congressional update in that, hopefully, unless I run out of time, which I hope I don't, should have updated best and worst case scenarios with bespoke maps, because maps are good. And with that, once again, bid you adieu.